You do not want to miss this episode. Christina and I are going to go through the election 2025 in Canada and what policies we'd like to see. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Control and Compound. This is our April update. And normally, Christina, joining me as always, Christina White. Christina, how you doing?
Hey Darren, I'm doing good. We're into an April update. There's a lot going on right now, and I'm super excited to chat about it.
Yeah, so we thought we'd do it, mix it up a little bit this time, just because we've got the election. We think it's a really important election in Canada. So we thought we'd kind of give our take on some of the policies that we'd like to see the government implement. If one of us was prime minister, what we would do, and we're going to try not to get too political because Christina, I find everything is just noise. Whether what someone looks like, whether if someone likes them or the look of them, all that's noise. I want to dig down to policies. I'm a policy person. I don't care so much as for the politicians as their policies. So I want to go through some of those policies today, and I think we're going to have fun with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to start off by saying as well that I am absolutely not a politician by any means. That's not what I do. I am though a very proud Canadian, and I am a business owner in Canada. I am a mother, and we've got this platform where we can share our opinion. And today, I know I mentioned to you, Darren, I was like, I think we should have a little chat about the election. This is big. This is what's happening in Canada right now, and I know we get to do these monthly updates and we give stats and things that are going on, and usually share our opinions too, which is great. But I thought it was really important for us to dig into this one a little bit more and spend some time on it. I'm finding right now when I look out there and what's being talked about, it almost looks like a popularity contest between two guys versus what it really is, an election with the different parties. At the end of the day, I don't care where you went to university. It's the noise, right? People are looking at it more as a popularity contest on who's better, and really we have to look at the policies, like you say, which is what we want to dig into today, right? Like the cabinet, they need the majority to decide and make big decisions. So it's not just the person that you're voting for, it is still the political party. And I think we have to bring a little bit light back to that, because it's becoming a bit of a popularity contest, as I said, out there, which isn't, it shouldn't be. We should be looking at the facts, right?
Yeah, it's funny. We've talked a lot about EOS and Control and Compound and what we do, and we share our values, what we need to have for employees, what we look for new people, and just how we conduct ourselves and what we believe in. And I think what we're going to talk about today is kind of the same thing, right? It's like what are the values of the different parties? What do they believe? What's their track record? We don't care where they went to school or what their background is. The same as when we hire someone, we go right person, right seat. Who is the right person to fill that right seat? And I think when it comes to politicians, I want the person with the right policies to fill that seat, even more important than anything else about the politician. I would rather great policies. And Stephen Harper, you go back in time, a lot of people didn't like him. I thought some of his policies were good. I like his fiscal responsibility. Was he the most likable guy in the world? Don't care.
Yeah, again, not a popularity contest. All right, let's dig into some of these though. And I think the most talked about right now, the most going on is the US tariffs, right? What's the take there?
Yeah, I mean the U.S. tariffs. That's a crapshoot, right? I mean, we don't know what Trump's going to finally settle on. It seems every day or week depends. There's new tariffs or threats of tariffs. I think we really just need a prime minister to deal with that, and that could be either one. Um, Neither one of them have a really a track record of dealing with Trump during this, so I wouldn't weigh one against or one better than the other. But it's the most important thing we're going to need right now. But I think the U.S. tariffs are going to be part of better management of Canada. The better we some of these other things we're going to talk about natural resource development, fiscal responsibility, lower taxes, lower regulation, all those things will allow us to deal with the tariffs better. I mean, we did a podcast recently where we talked about just the interprovincial tariffs, trade barriers we have in Canada. if we eliminated those, it would more than make up for what the US tariffs are going to do to this country. So I think it's a wake up call in Canada to say we can't have our productivity shrinking compared to the US like it has. The tariffs are just going to make another, just compound the problem that we've been creating, I think, for the last 10 years, where business investment hasn't been coming into Canada. But without a doubt, it's the biggest issue, or one of the biggest issues facing Canada today. But we talk about provincial trade issues. We always joke about insurance license. You know, I think I have something like 25 different insurance licenses across the country, because every province has their own individual license and way of doing it, and then I got to do it corporately and personally, and we multiply that by all our team members. Like, it's almost a full-time position as a small business to have someone look after contracting and insurance licenses through the country. And that's just typical of any small business. You get all these regulations you got to deal with, which I think are probably bigger for the small businesses than the US tariffs. But without a question, the US tariffs are big. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, and it's not the first time that we've had this issue with the US and tariffs. This has happened many of times throughout history. If we go back and we read the history books, it's happened, as little as 2018 we had the steel and aluminum tariffs back with the US. So this is not a brand new issue to be dealing with. So I think, we have to think of that. And I also, like you mentioned, like the fact that it shed light to a lot of people on these interprovincial tariffs like you talked about. I don't think a lot of people even realize that this was happening inside of our own country, which is important to acknowledge. I was reading a toll, and it said that Trump is one of the main reasons that is keeping Canadians up at night. Like, this is the thing that they are stressed and they're worried about, and I understand that. But sometimes I think you need to stop and look at the problem at hand, why we're in this place to begin with. Take a step back. Why are we in this place to begin with? And instead of thinking about retaliation, start focusing on us and what we can do to fix it, right? Like, start with the problem at home. And I found a quote that I just wanted to share. It's wise to direct your anger towards problems, not people, to focus your energies on answers, not excuses, which I think kind of rings true here. Let's take a step back. We've got Trump is what it is, right, guys? But we can take this moment in time to take a step back and look at what we can do differently for our country. And that's what I would like to see them focus on myself.
Right, which brings us to the next couple of things we're going to talk about. So let's jump into the next one. I think that's a perfect segue, is fiscal responsibility and deficit reduction. So the last 10 years have been a gong show. Apparently budgets don't bounce themselves. Small deficits was the plan, and then they got bigger and they got bigger, and the spending just got absolutely out of control. What happens when spending gets out of control? Taxes need to go up, and whether they increase taxes through an increase in the tax rate or a decrease in some of the tax exemptions we used to have, especially as business owners, the net result is they need more tax. We've got to start having balanced budgets, or working towards that, because if you don't manage, it's like a credit card. If you have a credit card that's getting personally out of control and you're not paying off the balance each month, it's a long-term financial disaster. And I think a lot of the problems we're having in Canada right now is a result of the just, I think, ridiculous government spending we've had, the increase in the civil service, the not balancing the budgets, not good fiscal responsibility. So I think that's probably the biggest thing I think Canada has to do. We'll follow maybe by the second one we're going to get into, but I think this is the big one: fiscal responsibility. We need a party that's going to be fiscally responsible.
Yeah, absolutely. Every month we talk about it in our podcast, the inflation and the Bank of Canada changes and all that, and it really does all circle back to this and what's happening. Is our government printing money and spending like a drunken sailor, as I've heard you say before? We can't have that anymore. We need to take a step back and make that better going forward. Definitely needs to be focused on.
And if we have this big governing party and we replace one person, is the entire government going to all of a sudden be efficient with one new person as leader?
Yeah, exactly. And that kind of rolls into the next one where we're hearing the talk a bit, a big talk in all of this election are the pipelines. They're coming up. They've come back up, and I think it's prime time for them to come back up. I don't know. People are definitely changing their stance on them at this point, to flow with which is best. But this is definitely something that we need to be talking about and looking at as Canadians. The fact that I can't go to the gas station and fill up my car with Canadian oil is crazy, right? So definitely being brought. This is something that needs to be talked about.
Yeah, I think energy and resource development is probably biggest the biggest issue Canada, the missed opportunity for Canada in the last 20, 30 years, not just the last 10. We should be one of the wealthiest countries in the world with our natural resources. So I want a leader who is going to develop our natural resources. And I think too, you got to look at the track record, right? Like, during an election campaign, anyone can say, "Hey, I'm pro development and pro resources," but it'd be like Don Cherry after 70 years of being in the hockey world to go, "Oh, for a 35-day period, I'm like, you know what? I think the Americans are better hockey players than Canada." Would anyone believe Don Cherry if he said that based upon what his track record is? So I think we got to look at some of these politicians. What is their track record on energy development, pipelines, developing oil and gas, and people can say anything during an election campaign, but if we don't develop our natural resources, it's the number one way to lift people out of poverty, to lift Canada really out of poverty right now, and to make us potentially one of the richest countries in the world. Not developing our natural resources in the last 30 years has been, I think, the biggest missed opportunity we've had.
Oh my gosh, we have so many resources here, right? Like we are so rich in resources in Canada. And I think we've been focusing on the wrong thing. Along the same lines as resources, let's, take a minute to talk about the carbon tax. We've had this was a big focus for the last few years, right? We've been pushing that carbon tax. We've been talking about the carbon tax. Now all of a sudden it's gone within weeks. Within weeks of a new prime minister, the carbon tax is gone. It's over. We don't need it anymore. Like it's not necessary. I guess it's gone. That's something that we need to talk about. If it was as important as it was for these last few years, and this green innovation and this climate change, and this is a large problem for Canada, how can we so quickly turn it around and it's not a problem anymore? Like, what's your take on that, Darren?
Well, first of all, the carbon tax is not gone. So Carney has paused it on the consumer carbon tax, but
Yes.
the corporate carbon tax is still in place. And
Yep.
he said that needs to be more robust and go after the big emitters. So Carney's plan is to increase the carbon tax on corporations to make up for the losing the carbon tax on individuals. Well, what do corporations do when they have increased costs? They pass it along. So it's no different for the economy. It's great political spin to say I'm going to eliminate the personal carbon tax. But yeah, you ask the average person on the street and they think, oh, everyone's eliminating. Both parties are eliminating carbon tax, and Polyev says no carbon tax on the corporations or individuals. Carney says we get a load up on the corporations. So again, I don't know how you develop our natural resources when we have carbon tax. When we think of these things we're about to talk about taxes, but when you have high taxes, carbon taxes, tariffs, and environmental regulations problems to develop your natural resources, they're not coming out of the ground. It's not pro business, pro natural resources development, and the carbon tax is not a great idea. If I hate the carbon tax. I think it's a horrible idea. I don't understand why we should buy oil and gas from a country halfway around the world, and that somehow is better for the environment than developing our natural resources here. And that's what carbon tax forces us to do: is go other places for our natural resources when we have them right in our backyard.
Yeah, something that definitely needs to be thought about when with this upcoming election. As we talked about policies, right? What are the policies? And what you just pointed out is extremely important because the typical Canadian out or the regular Canadian out there is going to think that both are axing the carbon tax. But as you said, that's not correct. The carbon tax is staying for businesses, and I've never seen a business not pass down that tax, right? Like the regular consumer is going to feel it for sure.
Yeah. Speaking of tax, let's jump to the next one. So taxes, again, if we are prime minister, we need to lower corporate tax and we need to lower personal taxes. Personal taxes, 53, 54% in a lot of provinces. That's not allowing us to attract businesses, to attract high priced individuals that want to work in this country. It doesn't make our businesses competitive. It doesn't invite people to invest in Canada. Corporate taxes are very high in Canada, and they're getting higher because what we've done in the past number of years is, we haven't increased our 500,000 small business tax first 500 of small business tax rate. It stayed stagnant, I think, for the last 9 or 10 years, and they've eliminated so many of the few tax benefits business owners had. They've eliminated almost all of them, other than cash value life insurance. So um, and the complications of taxes, like when you become a business owner and then you have a holding company and a trust, like it's crazy the amount of tax work that needs to be done for a business owner each year, and individuals aren't far behind.
Yeah, we actually did a podcast not that long ago, and we can drop it in the link below. But we looked at the past 10 years and the tax changes that have negatively impacted businesses, corporations inside Canada. And like you mentioned, it's been since 2015 since we saw that small business tax deduction. We've had the lifetime capital gains deduction changes. We've got the expansion on tax with income splitting, like lots of things that have happened to business owners over the last 10 years. So we have a whole podcast. We'll drop it on the link, drop it in the links if you want to dig into that. But taxes have to change. It has to be changed.
Yeah, and I think that's really what leads to not as many businesses being started today and not as many businesses surviving. I read an article that the business confidence rating in Canada is at the lowest point ever. Canadian business owners are fearful right now. And yes, in part by the tariffs, but in part because of all this other stuff that's been going on for the number of years, to make it harder and harder for businesses, to punish businesses with higher taxes, less tax deductions, more red tape, more just regulation after regulation. And that's why we're seeing not as many small businesses. And that's the backbone of our economy.
Yeah, we talk about that a lot, and that goes into what we want to discuss next. And we need a focus on small business in policy. In policy, right? Like the average small business, there's only about 130,000 created annually, and only 35% of them survive 5 years. That's a lot. No wonder people are scared to get into business. But we need these businesses. If we look at the small businesses in Canada right now, there's about 1.29 million. They employ over 10 million Canadians. That's
Hmm.
huge, right? Small business, like you said, is the backbone of Canada. And I know that we get caught up in the taxes, and we get caught up in the policies and the promises and things like that. But at the end of the day, all of this can impact those small businesses. So it has to be looked at.
Yeah, and I mean, typically government money goes towards spending billions of dollars to a multi-billion-dollar global company that's going to open up some battery plant or something that may or may not be successful. Like, again, it's not the focus on small business, yet 10 million Canadians are employed by small businesses. And those are the businesses that are the lifeblood of the country. They're in the small towns, they're in the big cities, they're everywhere. And the more we can do, the more politicians can have policies promote small businesses, the better the economy will be, the more money we'll have for healthcare, the more money we'll have for social projects. Without small business, we can't survive.
Yeah, it's a huge focus. So, and I think by looking at the types of policies that they're going to implement for innovation and entrepreneurship, so helping with venture funding, helping with other capital resources for startups, things like that. That's what we want to be looking for in the policies, that they're going to have access to capital to be able to start these businesses and for them to last after those 5 years. Right? We need to offer that to them.
Yep. Okay, let's jump into healthcare and housing. So, healthcare, well, we spend a lot of money on healthcare. How we doing, Christina? How's healthcare in your household?
So this one is a bit of a this one's is a topic for me, and it does get me a little bit fired up. I'm not going to lie. My son does not have a family doctor and hasn't had one. His family doctor retired a couple years ago. They still haven't fulfilled it. I've had issues with the healthcare system, and I think we all have. I'm not alone in this frustration by any means, and it's something that needs to be talked about. This is not a little problem. Like the wait times for surgeries, people waiting for surgeries, for testing. It's great that we say that Canada has this healthcare, but if we don't have access to it, we don't have it. We don't have it if we don't have access to it. And I think it's very important that when we're looking at policy, who is fast tracking doctors to be able to work in Canada, right? Like a big problem again is that red tape that we go back to. We've got doctors that have licensing in other countries. They come over here, they can't be doctors. It's not possible. The red tape that's there. My sister-in-law came over and she was from Brazil. She's a dentist. She's not a dentist anymore. Like it wasn't possible for her to be a dentist here. And like those things need to be looked at. We need to, look for policies that are going to fast track this. And again, with the small business owner side of things, doctors are typically business owners. They have medical professional corps. So it's extremely important that we have tax incentives for business owners and better tax rates in the provinces. Because I think, the worse the tax rate, the harder it is to get a doctor. Because why would a doctor come to one province versus the other if tax rates are better in the other, right? Like we have to look at that and see that that's a problem, that the tax incentives and the increase in taxes is going to defer doctors from wanting to come and work within our country. And we need them right now. So I know I am kind of happy in our province. And as of April, we increased the small business tax deduction here. And I'm hopeful that might attract some doctors to want to come to Nova Scotia, right? Maybe I'm going to get that doctor soon, maybe. But that's a positive, and it shows that those are the things that we need to be doing to be able to attract medical professionals.
Yeah, and I think we understand that healthcare is a provincial issue as much as it is a federal issue. We get the federal transfers, but it's still led by the feds as far as policies and definitely competitive tax rates. So when that capital gains inclusion came out this year, doctors were losing their mind when they were going to increase the capital gains inclusion up to 67%. Doctors were losing their mind. They had money in these holding companies because they don't have pension plans that they've been saving for 20, 30, 40 years. And all of a sudden the taxes are spiking. And, I've got a friend of mine who deals with a lot of doctors. And he said he had like 13 calls one day about how do I get out of this country? So again, we can have federal tax policies that implement our provincial doctors. So we've got to have consistent pro-business, pro-healthcare policies to help our healthcare. And then, all right, let's talk about housing, Christina. Housing prices, let's see what's happened in the last 10 years. I don't know. I think they've gone up about a zillion percent. Let's see. We bring in millions of people into the country, and we increase government spending rapidly and don't approve projects and make it cumbersome for landlords to actually collect rent or the developers to build. And lo and behold, we have a housing shortage that doesn't seem like it's going to get better anytime soon. So what would we like to see a policy to promote housing?
Yeah, so we definitely we need some policies around how they're going, and I think eliminating red tape, like you said. But outside of policy, what I see, and this is kind of a little bit more, it's a little bit outside of policy. But I don't like the fact that they're making real estate investors and developers the enemy. I've seen that for the last 10 years. Like I've seen them talk about real estate investors being the problem. You'll see it still out there today, is that the real estate investor is the problem, the developer is the problem. But here's the thing, rentals don't exist without people who invest in the rentals. They're just not going to be there for Canadians. So I really want to stop looking at it that way, right? Like one of the policies, they're both going to remove GST on new homes. You still need a developer to build them. Like, think about it, right? We have to stop pointing fingers and start focusing on the policy and the red tape and working together. I would love to see the country work together with real estate investors, with developers, to be able to fix this housing crisis, because they're the people that are going to be able to do it. They've done this. Like, real estate investors are good at this. Developers are good at this. Let's work together with them, and not point the finger, and kind of remove that red tape is my take on the housing, is what I'd like to see.
Yeah. And I think, cutting that red tape overall, we've got to cut red tape for businesses. We've got to cut it for developers. We've less regulation is going to mean more money being invested and projects getting done quicker. And I think we need a lot less red tape too. Now I mentioned, I think we brought in too many people too fast. But we do got to have avenues to bring in highly skilled people to this country to fill those jobs. And I know that sounds counterintuitive. Oh, I thought there was too much immigration. No, but for the highly skilled people, we need opportunities to get them in our country and help grow our country, grow our GDP. So if we want Canada to prosper, I think the key issues are we need to rein in government spending. It has been a disaster the last 10 years, the amount of government spending and red tape and regulations. We've got to lower personal income tax and corporate income tax. We are not attractive to attract people or businesses right now. Our taxes are too high. Our regulations are too high. We've got to reduce both of them. We've got to eliminate this price on carbon. I don't believe makes sense for us to put a price on carbon here, but I can fill up my gas tank with Saudi oil and we have to import natural resources. Canada should be a very, very wealthy country today because of our natural resources. And if you put a price on carbon, and again, the Liberal Party said they'll maintain it, they'll put a price on carbon and increase it for the big emitters. So you're going to have Canadian corporations with carbon tax, tariffs, and much higher taxes than the US. And we've got an American president saying, why don't you move your business to the US, pay no tariffs, way less tax, and no carbon tax. So I think that's just a horrible idea at today's day and age. I'm not saying never, but today we can't have a carbon tax. We've got to increase business investment in Canada, and we're not going to do that with a price on carbon. Our per investment per worker in the last 10 years has shrunk 20%. So how much businesses invest in per worker? US is spending right now about $27,000 per worker, and we're investing $15,000 per worker. Businesses don't want to invest in Canada because of our high taxes, because of our regulation, because of our things like the carbon tax. We've got to develop the natural resources. It's the only way we're really going to combat those tariffs. And we've got to be business friendly, less red tape, less regulation. I do have some concerns about the liberal leader. You know, he was the UN envoy on climate. He started a climate initiative. He was pro carbon tax. Is saying now the carbon tax on corporations will maintain and will increase the high emitters. And I think you really got to look at what's the best policies for the country. And those policies I just listed, I think, are the most important. Now, we would love to have Mark Carney on the show, or Pierre Poilievre, or one of the representatives to come on and talk about what they think the policies they're going to implement that'll be great for the country. But if you don't get a handle on taxes, government spending, getting rid of the tax on fossil fuels, carbon tax, and developing our natural resources, then I don't think you're going to help Canada the way that I think we should be helped. Canada is an incredible nation. I'm so proud to be Canadian, but we could be so much more.
I love that wrap up, Darren. And I just add one little thing to it, and it's a quote that I like. You know, the definition of insanity is doing the exact same thing over and over again and expecting different results. And I think we kind of keep that in the back of our mind as we go through some of these things.
All right, so that's not our typical monthly update. We're going to wrap up there. We'll be back next month with our typical update on what's going on in all the different sectors of the economy. But we thought this would be an interesting one today. That's it. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for watching this episode of Control and Compound. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell button so you never miss a new episode. And if you're ready to learn more, head to our website, controlandcompound.com. The link's below.